I didn't sleep at all that night. My mind was racing with thoughts of what the game really was. Was it some kind of elaborate prank? A sick social experiment? Or something darker, something supernatural? I didn't have any answers, only questions. Day 4. The game escalates. By the 4th day, my paranoia had reached a fever pitch. I hadn't left my apartment since the power went out. I didn't trust anything or anyone. The isolation was suffocating, but I felt like leaving would be a death sentence. The rules had said I couldn't leave, and I wasn't about to test that theory. But then something strange happened. My phone buzzed again and a new message appeared, despite the power still being out. The game is almost over. You must run. Run? Run from what? I didn't know, but the fear that gripped me was unlike anything I had ever felt before. My instincts screamed at me to get out, to run as far and as fast as I could. But where would I go? The game had reached into every corner of my life. There was no escape. Then came the sound of someone knocking on my door. Not a light tap, but a heavy, deliberate knock. It echoed through the apartment, sending chills down my spine. I froze, clutching the knife tighter, staring at the door as if it might burst open at any second. The knocking stopped. I approached the door slowly, my hands shaking. I looked through the peephole, but there was no one there, just the empty hallway. But when I turned away from the door, I saw it. The same message from my phone, scrawled in black letters across my living room wall. Run. The escape. I didn't wait. I grabbed my jacket, my keys, and bolted out of the apartment. I ran down the stairs, my footsteps echoing loudly as I raced toward the exit. But when I got outside, everything felt wrong. The street was too quiet, the air too still. It was like the world had been drained of life. I jumped into my car, started the engine, and drove. I didn't care where I was going as long as I was moving. I had to get as far away as possible. But the farther I drove, the more I realized there was no escaping the game. Every street I turned down, every road I took, it was like I was being funneled toward something. And then my car died. I was stranded, miles from anywhere, on a desolate road in the middle of the night. The silence was deafening. I sat there for what felt like hours, my hands gripping the steering wheel, waiting for something, anything to happen. That's when I saw them. Figures, barely visible in the dark, standing at the edge of the trees. I couldn't make out their faces, but I could feel their eyes on me. They were watching, waiting. The game wasn't over. It had only just begun. I've always been a curious person. Maybe that's my problem. I've never known when to stop digging, even when I knew the rabbit hole might lead me somewhere I didn't want to be. But nothing could have prepared me for what I found on the dark web. I'd heard the stories before, who hasn't? They tell you it's a place of nightmares, illegal markets, human trafficking, the kind of sickening content that would make any normal person turn their head in disgust. I wasn't into any of that, of course. I just wanted to explore, see what was out there. Maybe I was bored, or maybe I just thought it would be exciting, and who knows. I had everything set up, a VPN, a Tor browser, all the precautions you read about. I felt safe, anonymous. That's where I was wrong. I stumbled upon the site late one night. It didn't have a name, just a black screen with a single input field. Enter your email to proceed. Now, I wasn't stupid. I knew better than to give away personal information on the dark web, so I hesitated. But there was something about it, a strange pull, like a gut feeling telling me this wasn't just another dead-end link. So I used a burner email, typed it in and hit enter. The screen stayed black for a few moments and I thought maybe the site was a dud. But then, a loading bar appeared, slow and deliberate, inching its way across the screen. When it finished, a simple message appeared. Welcome to the black box. That was it. No flashy design, no disturbing imagery, just those words. And then below them, a link that read, Proceed? I clicked. Immediately my screen went black again, but this time it didn't stay empty. A chat window popped up and someone, or something, was typing on the other end. The messages came fast. "Do you know what this is?" I stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. Before I could even think about it, another message popped up. "The black box is a collection of the deepest, darkest secrets the web has to offer. It's not just data, it's reality. And now, it's yours." I should have closed the window. I should have shut off my computer and gone to bed. But I didn't. My curiosity got the best of me. I typed back, "What do you mean, reality?" There was a long pause. For a moment, I thought whoever was on the other end had logged off, but then another message appeared. "We see everything. Everyone. Even you." That sent a shiver down my spine. It was creepy, sure, but that's what the dark web was full of. People trying to scare you, make you think they were all powerful. I wasn't buying it. I typed back, "Nice try, but I know how this works." This time the response was immediate. "Do you?" And then, before I could reply, something happened that made my blood run cold. My webcam light flickered on just for a second, but it was enough to send me into a panic. I hadn't turned it on. No apps were running that could have activated it. I slammed my laptop shut, heart racing, trying to calm myself down. I told myself it was a coincidence, maybe a glitch, a random activation. I didn't want to believe that someone had control over my device. But then my phone buzzed. I nearly jumped out of my chair. When I picked it up, there was a new message from an unknown number. It was just one sentence. "We warned you." At this point I was terrified. I couldn't explain how they had my phone number, let alone how they were accessing my webcam. I immediately disconnected from the internet, yanked the Ethernet cable out of my router and powered down my laptop. But it didn't matter. Things got worse. That night I barely slept. Every little sound in my apartment had me jumping out of bed, checking the locks on my doors and windows, making sure no one was there. I was paranoid. And for good reason. The next morning, I woke up to find a small package outside my door. No note, no return address. Just a plain black box, completely sealed with thick, heavy tape. I hesitated before bringing it inside. But again, my curiosity won out. I set it down on my kitchen table and carefully peeled away the tape. Inside was a small black USB drive, unmarked and completely nondescript. I knew I shouldn't plug it in. I knew that this was exactly how people got in trouble, but I couldn't resist. I needed to know what was on it. I booted up an old laptop, one I hadn't used in years and didn't care about. I figured if anything happened, at least it wouldn't be my main computer. With shaky hands, I inserted the USB drive. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, a folder appeared on the desktop. It was named with today's date. I clicked on it. Inside the folder were dozens of video files, all with random strings of numbers as titles. I opened the first one, and what I saw made me physically recoil from the screen. It was me. The video was a recording of me, sitting at my computer, browsing the dark web just hours earlier. But it wasn't recorded from my webcam. It was from outside my window, peering in from the darkness. I couldn't breathe. I quickly closed the video and opened another one. This time it was footage of me from earlier that day, leaving my apartment, walking down the street. The camera had followed me the entire way, filming from a distance. Panic set in. I rushed to unplug the USB, but my computer froze. The screen went black again, just like it had the night before. And then, just like before, a chat window appeared. "We're watching you." I slammed the laptop shut and ripped the USB out. I didn't care what was on the rest of the files. I was done. But it wasn't over. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of my phone buzzing. Unknown numbers calling, then hanging up as soon as I answered. I started receiving emails from addresses I didn't recognize, all with the same subject line. "Open the box." I tried ignoring it. I tried going about my life as if nothing had happened, but the paranoia never went away. Everywhere I went, I felt like I was being watched. I'd see the same person over and over again, at the grocery store, outside my apartment, even at my job. Always just out of sight, but close enough that I couldn't ignore them. Then, one night, I came home to find my apartment door slightly ajar. I knew I'd locked it when I left. I stood in the hallway, heart pounding, debating whether I should go inside or call the police. I chose the former, a mistake I'll regret for the rest of my life. When I stepped into the apartment, everything seemed normal at first. Nothing was out of place, nothing missing. But as I walked into the living room, I froze. Sitting on the coffee table was another black box. This one wasn't sealed. The lid was slightly open, as if someone had just placed it there and left in a hurry. My hands trembled as I reached for it, knowing that whatever was inside couldn't be good. I lifted the lid, and my stomach turned. Inside the box was a photograph of me, taken just moments earlier, standing in the hallway, staring at my own front door. On the back of the photograph, written in neat block letters, was a single sentence: "There is no escape." I don't know how they're doing it. I don't know how they've been following me, watching me. I've changed my locks, moved apartments, even switched jobs. But it doesn't matter. No matter where I go, the black box finds me. And I'm scared, because now, when I look out my window at night, I can see them, standing there in the shadows, waiting, watching. I've always been drawn to the darker corners of the internet, not because I'm some thrill seeker or masochist, but because I've always believed there's more to this world than what we can see on the surface. I wanted to dig deeper, uncover the secrets that most people would rather ignore. The dark web was my way in. I'd been exploring it for a while, usually just out of curiosity, browsing forums, scrolling through hidden marketplaces, reading up on conspiracy theories. But I never really found anything that scared me, until one night when I came across a chat room that didn't seem to belong. It didn't have a proper name, just a string of random letters and numbers as the title. Normally, I would have ignored something like that. The chat rooms on the dark web are usually just full of trolls or people bragging about illegal stuff. But something about this one felt off. I couldn't explain it. Maybe it was the fact that there were no users listed online, or the fact that it didn't appear in any of the usual directories. It just existed in its own little pocket, tucked away from everything else. Against my better judgment, I clicked the link. The room was completely empty. No avatars, no usernames, no messages, just a black screen with a single input field at the bottom. I typed a simple greeting. "Hello?" Nothing. I waited for a few minutes, refreshing the page occasionally, but still, no one responded. Just when I was about to leave, a message popped up. "You're not supposed to be here." I blinked, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. That wasn't the kind of response I was expecting. My heart started to race, but I couldn't help myself. I replied, "Why not?" For a long moment there was nothing but silence. Then, the screen flickered, and another message appeared. "You're being watched." Chills ran down my spine. I checked my webcam. It was off. I even covered it with a sticky note just to be sure, but that didn't stop the unease creeping into my chest. I stared at the screen, feeling more exposed than ever before. The chat window stayed silent, as if daring me to respond. Against my better instincts, I typed another message. "Who's watching me?" This time, the reply was instant. "You don't want to know." A bead of sweat trickled down my forehead. I wiped it away, my hand shaking. What the hell was this? Was someone trying to scare me, or was this just some elaborate prank? I couldn't be sure, but either way, I was done. I closed the browser and shut off my computer, convinced that this was just some loser with too much time on their hands. But things didn't end there. The next day, I woke up to an email in my inbox. It didn't have a subject line, just a message that said, "Open the chat again." I ignored it. I figured it was just some spam bot or phishing attempt. But then the emails kept coming, more persistent, more cryptic. each one telling me to go back, to open the chat room again. By the end of the day, I had over 50 of them. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I clicked on the link in one of the emails, and it brought me back to that same chat room, the one with no users listed. Only this time, I wasn't alone. There was a single username now right at the top of the screen, The Watcher. I didn't want to type anything, but I couldn't stop myself. It was like something had taken control of my hands. "Who are you?" I typed, my fingers trembling. The screen went black for a moment, and then the message appeared. "You've been chosen." "Chosen for what?" I typed back, my heart racing faster now. "To disappear." I froze. The word lingered on the screen, taunting me. My breath caught in my throat as I read it over and over again. My instincts screamed at me to turn off the computer, but it was like I was paralyzed, unable to do anything but stare. Another message popped up. "You're not the first." I clicked on the username, trying to find any information about this watcher, but nothing came up. No profile, no history, just that single chilling name. I felt a cold sweat break out across my skin. And then, without warning, the chat room filled with other users. One by one, usernames appeared, all of them unfamiliar and cryptic. But none of them said anything. The room was filled with silence, except for the presence of the Watcher. Then the chat exploded with messages all at once. "Run! Don't let them find you. It's too late. You're already marked." I tried to type back, to ask what they meant, but the words wouldn't come out fast enough. It was chaos. Messages flashing across the screen, too quick to read. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears, the panic rising in my throat. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, it stopped. The usernames vanished, and the chat room went silent again. Only the Watcher remained. "You can't escape." I slammed my laptop shut, my heart pounding out of control. I didn't know what was happening, but I wasn't sticking around to find out. I packed up my things and left my apartment, not even bothering to lock the door. I just needed to get out to clear my head. But the messages didn't stop. They started appearing on my phone, on my TV, even on my smart fridge. No matter where I went, no matter what I did, I couldn't escape it. Every screen, every device, and they all showed the same message. "You're being watched." That night I checked into a motel, hoping to get away from it all. But when I turned on the TV, there it was again. The chat room. The Watcher's name flickered across the screen, and then the final message appeared. "We're coming." The lights in the motel room flickered, and the temperature dropped. I could hear footsteps outside my door, slow and deliberate. My heart hammered in my chest as I backed away, too terrified to move or even breathe. The door handle rattled. Then came a knock. I don't know who or what was on the other side. I don't want to know. All I know is that I grabbed my things and ran. I didn't stop until I was miles away, somewhere I thought I'd be safe. But the thing is, you're never really safe, because I'm still being watched. I've always been an insomniac. It's been that way since I was a teenager. Long nights spent scrolling through the darkest corners of the internet, looking for something, anything, to distract my restless mind. I guess that's how I found the dark web in the first place. It became my escape. Somewhere I could explore the things most people never dared to touch. A place for people like me, who needed more than just the everyday distractions of social media or Netflix. Most of the time it was harmless. I'd lurk in forums, read conspiracy theories, or watch weird videos that you wouldn't find anywhere else. But one night, I stumbled across something that made me realize just how wrong I'd been about the dark web. There were things out there I wasn't prepared for. It started innocently enough. I was scrolling through a dark web marketplace, the kind of place that sold illegal software, hacked credit card numbers, even black market medical supplies. Nothing that shocked me anymore. But then I saw a new section I hadn't noticed before, tucked away near the bottom of the page, labeled Curiosities. I clicked it. It was a list of items for sale, but they were strange. Not your typical drugs or fake IDs. These were personal. Old diaries, someone's childhood artwork, VHS tapes with no labels. At first I thought it was some sort of niche collector's market for odd things people found in thrift stores. But the further I scrolled, the weirder it got. There were items with descriptions like, "The last recorded memories of a stranger," or "A fragment of time, captured forever." One listing was for something called the Forgotten Box, described as a collection of memories no one should own. I couldn't help myself. I was intrigued. I clicked on the listing. The seller's page was minimal. No profile picture, no information about who they were, just a price and a shipping option. The item itself was cheap, practically free, which was odd considering the mystery it promised. Against my better judgment, I bought it. I figured worst-case scenario, I was about to receive some broken toy or piece of junk. Best case, I'd have a weird story to tell. A few days later, a small unmarked package arrived at my door. There was no return address, no identifying labels. Just a plain black box inside, no bigger than a shoebox. It felt heavier than I expected, and when I opened it, there was only one thing inside: an old beat-up camcorder and a single cassette tape. I stared at it for a while, unsure of what I was supposed to do with it. But my curiosity got the better of me. I dug out my old VCR, hooked it up to the TV, and popped the tape in. The screen flickered to life, showing grainy, handheld footage of someone's bedroom. It looked like it was filmed years ago. The furniture was old, the decor outdated. The camera wobbled as if whoever was holding it was trying to stay hidden. They were filming through a crack in the door, watching someone lying in bed. At first I thought it was some kind of creepy voyeur tape, maybe filmed without the person's knowledge. But then I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The person in the bed was me. I was frozen, staring at the screen, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. The room was identical to mine. The same bed, the same posters on the wall, the same pile of clothes on the floor. And the figure in the bed? It was me, sleeping. My mind was racing. This couldn't be possible. The footage had to be old. Decades old, based on the quality. But there I was, just as I looked now, lying there, completely unaware that someone had been filming me. I rewound the tape hoping I had seen it wrong, that maybe it was just some bizarre coincidence. But no. Every detail was exactly the same. It was me. I yanked the tape out of the VCR, my heart pounding. My first instinct was to check my apartment. I tore through every inch of the place looking for hidden cameras, signs that someone had been there. But there was nothing. No cameras, no signs of forced entry, nothing to suggest anyone had been in my apartment, let alone filming me while I slept. I tried to calm down, telling myself it had to be a trick, some kind of elaborate prank. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the case. I couldn't stop thinking about the listing on the dark web. A collection of memories no one should own. What the hell had I bought? And who was the seller? The next day, I went back to the dark web marketplace to check the seller's profile. But it was gone. The entire listing had vanished, as if it had never existed. I tried searching for it, looking through the forums for any mention of it, but there was nothing. No trace of the box, the seller, or anyone who had experienced something similar. For days, I was paranoid. I barely slept, convinced that someone was watching me, that whoever had filmed that tape was still out there. I started locking all my doors, covering my windows, even checking under my bed like a scared child. But it didn't help. The feeling that I was being watched never went away. A week later, I woke up to find another package on my doorstep. No note, no return address. Just a plain black box. Inside was another tape. This time, I didn't even bother hooking up the VCR. I smashed the tape to pieces, throwing it in the trash, hoping that would end it. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't. The next morning, there was another box, another tape. It didn't matter what I did. Every time I destroyed one, another would show up the next day. It was relentless. Whoever the collector was, they had me now. There was no escaping it. I stopped sleeping altogether, too afraid of what I might see on the tapes. Because the worst part? Each new tape wasn't just someone filming me. No, each one showed something darker, more terrifying. The me in the tapes started to act differently. I would be awake, moving in ways I didn't remember, staring into the camera, smiling in a way I never had. It was like watching a version of myself that I didn't recognize. That wasn't me at all. And now? Now I don't know if I'm the one being filmed, or if I'm the one holding the camera. I've always been a tech geek. Programming, hacking. It's been my life since I was a kid. So naturally, as soon as I learned about the dark web, I was hooked. Not because I was interested in buying anything illegal, but because it was like the Wild West of the internet. A place where rules didn't exist, where you could see things most people didn't even know about. After years of exploring, I felt like I'd seen it all. The illicit marketplaces, the shady forums, and even the conspiracy theory pages. None of it shocked me anymore. I'd grown numb to it. But one night I found something that was different. Something that made me feel that strange mix of fear and excitement I hadn't felt since my first time delving into the dark web. It started with a post on a hacker forum I frequented. It wasn't the usual how-to guides or discussions about security flaws. No, this was something more cryptic. The title simply read, "Unlock the Truth." Curiosity piqued. I clicked it. The post was short, just a link and a sentence. If you can crack the code, you'll see what they don't want you to see. Most of the comments beneath it were dismissive, people calling it a scam or a joke. But there was something about it, something that felt off. I copied the link and pasted it into my Tor browser, expecting some run-of-the-mill puzzle site or, at worst, a phishing attempt. But what I found was different. The site was a plain black screen with a single line of text. The code is your key. Can you unlock it? Beneath it was a text box, inviting me to input a password. I'm not the kind of person to back down from a challenge, especially one that involved cracking code. I spent hours trying to figure it out, running the site through every kind of analysis tool I had, looking for hidden clues in the source code, in the metadata. Eventually, I found something buried deep within the page's code, a string of numbers and letters that looked like a cipher. After some time working on it, I cracked the code. When I input the correct sequence, the screen flickered and loaded a new page. It was a message in plain text. "You've been chosen. Welcome to the network." Before I could even process what that meant, my screen filled with lines of code. It was running something, compiling data faster than I could keep track of. Then the page redirected to a live video feed. What I saw shook me. It was a dimly lit room, the feed grainy but clear enough to make out the details. A man was tied to a chair in the center of the room. He was struggling, his head lolling from side to side like he was drugged or unconscious. A door behind him opened, and two figures dressed in all black entered the room. They didn't speak, didn't hesitate. One of them pulled out a large knife, and that's when I closed the window. My hands were shaking as I slammed my laptop shut. My heart was pounding in my chest, but part of me wanted to believe it was a prank, some sick joke, but it didn't feel like one. That's when the messages started. My phone buzzed with a notification, an unknown number. The text read, "You can't stop watching now. Once you're in, you're in." I froze, staring at the message. How had they gotten my number? My mind was racing, but before I could react, my laptop powered on by itself, the same video feed filling the screen again. The two men were still in the room, standing over the bound figure. One of them glanced up at the camera as if staring directly at me. Then the screen went black. A new message appeared on my laptop. "You're part of the network now." I tried everything to turn off the computer, to block whatever access they had, but nothing worked. My mouse froze, my keyboard was unresponsive, and I could only watch as new files started downloading onto my system. They were video files, all with cryptic names, strings of letters and numbers, just like the code I had cracked to get into the site. I opened one, and instantly regretted it. The footage showed a woman sitting in her living room, completely unaware that she was being watched. The camera must have been hidden, positioned in the corner of the room. She went about her day, reading a book, sipping tea, doing nothing out of the ordinary. But then, the screen glitched. The next frame showed her asleep in bed. This time there was someone else in the room. A shadowy figure stood at the foot of her bed, watching her sleep. My stomach turned as I watched the figure lean over her, getting closer, until the video cut out. I tried to delete the file, but it wouldn't let me. Every attempt I made to regain control of my computer was met with failure. The message appeared again on my screen. "You belong to us now." In a panic, I disconnected the laptop from the internet, but the files were still there, multiplying. Every time I tried to delete them, more would appear. Each one was worse than the last, footage of people being stalked, abducted, tortured. I recognized some of their faces from missing persons reports I'd seen online. This wasn't just some random dark website. This was something bigger, something organized, a network of people who were watching, collecting, and doing things I didn't even want to imagine. And now they had me. The texts kept coming, each one more threatening than the last. "You're one of us now. Don't try to run. The network sees everything." I don't